Ryan Holiday, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks.
Why do you do what you do?
I don't really feel like I have a choice. You know, I mean, like, I watched this thing with Jerry Seinfeld once, and he was saying that comedians write jokes for the same reasons that woodchucks do what they do. Like, you don't have that's just what you do. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like it's some combination of DNA decided. So I feel like it's. I mean, obviously, I guess I could choose. I chose actively to sort of make it possible, but I feel like it wasn't so much of a choice. And like when I talk to people who are thinking about becoming authors, like I usually go like, if you can not do it, you shouldn't do it. So like,
Dang, that's food for thought for me.
yeah, like if I have a book idea and then I can convince myself not to do that book idea, then I feel like bullet dodged.
Oh, okay, that makes more sense. I thought you were saying sort of like, if you can convince yourself not to write, then don't write. But you're saying if the book isn't so deeply in your thought process or what you have to get out into the world that
you should only
write it.
You should only write a book if you can't not write the book, and you should only be a writer if you have to be a writer. So like you know in the movie Fight Club, like they want to join the Fight Club, and he's like, go away. And then if you stay for 3 days, then you're allowed. Like if you can endure being told to leave for 3 days, you know, like
yeah.
But if you leave, then you didn't have what it takes.
Oh, that's super interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, so the first book that I actually read of yours was Trust Me, I'm Lying. When did that come out?
2012.
That was a long time ago. That was when I read it too. And I felt like that was the first time I was reading a book and actually getting like underground real business advice. I was like, there's like all the good, really good business books, really good like advice books. But I was reading this and I was like, what is this world? It was really interesting. I don't really want to go down that path today, but that is how I discovered you initially. But as a lot of people who listen to this show or follow my YouTube channel know, I'm a daily reader of the Daily Stoic, and that has been my first chance at understanding Stoicism, or at least I would like to say I'm understanding it, and philosophy. And so before anybody shuts off this podcast, because it could be really easy to just hear philosophy or Stoicism and go like, okay, this is not the right one for me. Can you kind of just give an overarching idea of what it is and why it matters?
Yeah, like that phrase, Stoic philosophy, is a very unappealing phrase, which I totally get. And that's because the word Stoic lowercase like means has no emotions. And philosophy means like abstract theoretical nonsense. And so I totally get it. If you're like a busy person with a job or kids or a life or a career trying to make, like who has time for
Unrelatable.
that? And that's the opposite of what Stoic philosophy is supposed to be. So like my sort of single sentence definition of Stoic philosophy is like, the Stoics believe we don't control the world around us, we control how we respond to the world around us. But like the 4 virtues of Stoicism are really simple. It's courage, so like bravery, belief in yourself, you know, putting yourself out there. Temperance, so moderation, sort of being sober in all things. Justice, doing the right thing. And then wisdom, so, you know, learning, understanding, knowledge. And I feel like there is nothing in life that is not improved by those sort of 4 virtues or 4 traits. And like what I usually tell people when I'm talking about Stoicism is like, okay, I could tell you all the things that the Stoics have said or believed, but why don't we just look at who the actual Stoics were?
Yeah.
Right. So you have Marcus Aurelius, the emperor of Rome, the most powerful man in the world. He's ascribing to this philosophy. And who does he get it from? He gets it from this guy named Epictetus, who was a slave who'd been banned from Rome by a previous emperor.
Oh, wow.
So it's like,
by the way, is that where the word epic came from?
I don't think so. But you're like, oh, this is a philosophy for extreme success, extreme adversity, and basically every kind of person in between. And I think most of us sit in between emperor and slave.
That is really fascinating because it's sort of a testament to how much this particular subject matter can bring different types of people together too. So I guess like that's the 4 things. Like how do those? Well, let's start here. Why did you get excited about this? Why did you start leaning into Stoicism and really, you know, you couldn't unwrite the books, right?
Yeah. So I was in college and someone was like, you got to read this book, and I read it and it was like, oh, this is what I've been looking for my whole life. Like, here is people giving real advice about real problems. So they're not like, how do we know if we're living in a computer simulation or not? Or how do we know there's such a thing as right or wrong? They're saying like, here's how you control your temper. They're saying like, here's how you should deal with your fear of death. They're like, here's how to be a good person, right? So like, you'll hear these philosophers debate about like, well, actually, if you think about it this way, there's no such thing as wrong. And Marcus Aurelius is like, he actually says this, is waste no more time thinking about what a good person is like, just be one. And so I like the idea of just like really blunt, straightforward advice about how to be a better person, how to be better at your job, how to deal with stress, how to deal with worry, like all the problems that you and I have in the course of our lives that are not directly, like even the problems we have that are related to the technology that we have is still a fundamentally human problem. So like the idea that Marcus Aurelius or Seneca wasn't dealing with information overload or dealing with being busy or being stuck in traffic is absurd. Of course, they were dealing with all these things in their own way, and they thought a lot about them, and they came up with a lot of solutions for those problems.
That's so funny, because one of my questions I was going to ask you is like, how do you feel that this subject is just thrown for a loop for people now that social media is sort of engrossing everybody's lives?
Yeah, I mean, I think what social media is doing is taking things that already existed and then just magnifying them. So like in 1500, Blaise Pascal said, all of our problems stem from our inability to sit quietly in a room alone. Well, now you're sitting quietly in a room alone and you have an iPhone, like it makes it even harder to just do that, right? And so I think these are timeless, sort of perennial human struggles, and then they've just been amplified. So like there's very little that you read in Marcus Aurelius where or like the only things that you read in Stoicism that strike you as maybe a bit off is like when they talk about slavery or when they talk about women or when they talk about, like when they're really okay with like killing people, like in the way that things were different back then.
Right.
Okay, so not all of it translates, but like, what the things that make us fundamentally human have not changed in 2,000 years. Like I open my book Stillness Is the Key with this story from Seneca that Seneca tells in one of his letters. Sorry. You can just answer and hang up. It's just a spam call.
No problem.
Or you can unplug it.
We love a good landline.
I have
while we're talking about social media.
What was I saying?
The story in the beginning.
Yeah. So this is exactly what we're talking about. So Seneca writes this story about how he's in his apartment in Rome trying to write, and he's trying to focus. He's trying to take his, he's trying to zoom in on what he's doing. And there's like a guy, selling things downstairs. There's construction noise. There's somebody getting arrested. He's above a gym, so he can hear the noises from the gym. It's like he's saying everything but my landline is ringing. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And he's talking about how hard it is to get back on task, but how important it is, and how he's like, when you're really locked in, it doesn't matter what the noises outside are because you can tune them out. And so, like 2,000 years ago, people were struggling with the exact same thing that you're talking about in your videos.
So this is really, okay, this might go dark like super fast, but okay. I read something, because I've been reading Stillness Is the Key. I just finished it up. I think it was in Stillness Is the Key. There was something about, or maybe it was the Daily Stoic, because I'm reading them at the same time, so I could be getting them mixed up, especially now that it's December in the Daily Stoic.
Yes.
But specifically about death.
Yes.
And I guess like maybe if you could just kind of summarize the methodology about death, the way the Stoics would frame it. But it really doesn't even sound like we're learning how to live a life. It's like we're learning how to die eventually.
So Cicero's line was like, to philosophize is to learn how to die. He said like, that's what we're doing. That's the most important thing that will happen to us, because it's the final thing. And so he's like, what the Stoics believed is that like, we all know we're going to die, and that's scary. So we deny it, we pretend it's not there, or we're really afraid of it. And both of those things rob you of the present moment. And so with the Stoic exercise this idea of memento mori, sort of meditating on your mortality, thinking about death on a regular basis. It seems a little morbid, but it's actually, I think on the one hand, it's a productivity tool. But on the other hand, it's a way of like locking in and caring about what's in front of you. So I think This is one of my favorite exercises. So Seneca talks a lot about time, and he says like we're really good at protecting our property and protecting our money, but we're really bad at protecting our time. Like if your neighbor came over and parked your car on your lawn, you'd be like, get off my lawn, I own that.
Right.
Or if they tried to expand their house across your property line, you'd be like, how dare you? But if your neighbor came over and was just wasting your time with gossip or wasting your time in some pointless conflict, you would gladly waste time with them, even though you can buy more property. You cannot buy more time. You can earn more money, but you can't buy more time. So Seneca talks about death all the time, but he's talking about it from the perspective of not wasting life. So I think he has two things that I really like from him. So one, he says like, don't think about death as something that's happening in the future. Think about death as something that it is already happening. So he says like the time that passes belongs to death. So he's like, you're dying every minute. You're dying like every day. And so if you think about it that way, that it's like, he's like the time that has passed belongs to death. So that means that like yesterday, like, so I don't think I have 40 years left if I live to be in my 70s. I think I've already died 32 years. And this helps me decide what I say yes to and what I say no to. That's really important.
I just found that was groundbreaking when I read that, because I was thinking, if you start reading this stuff, or reading it, I mean, doing anything, reading it in the way that it's like, it's not about how you're living every day. It's about how you're present in the day, because it's going to go away. It's gone. It's like the last second is gone now. That's never going to happen again. This is even something I do in the morning as part of my routine, just writing the date and the time at the beginning of my morning pages, like, well, this date and time is never going to happen again. It's gone. And so then it's like, where are you at the end of those 3 pages? If you want to write the time down again, how much time passed? I feel like that's the most present that I am. And time is something I'm super aware of. I'll forget what year it is all the time, but I definitely know what time it is for the most part.
So one of the ones I love from Marcus Aurelius and Epictetus too, they talk about, they're like, when you tuck your children in at night, you should say to yourself, they may not survive to morning. So that seems like super dark. And as a parent, like, all you want to think are good things about your child.
Of course.
So the idea that you would be actively thinking about your child dying seems so fucked up. And I totally get it.
Absolutely.
Well, first off, Marcus Aurelius unfortunately did lose like 5 children. So like things were dark back then.
Wow.
Right? Things were dark back then. But I don't think that's what the exercise is about. It's not like, oh, thank God he prepared himself. So that's not what it's about.
Totally.
Because nothing can possibly prepare you for it.
Never.
I think what it's about, and I realize this every night when I put my kids to bed, is that you kind of find you're like, okay, I got to put my kid to bed. This is the time I put him to bed. So it should be, I need to finish this task. Right? And you can, if you're a productive, like hardworking person, you even take things like relationships as tasks. I think the point of the exercise is to go, this could be the last bedtime that I get, so I'm not going to rush through it. Like, I think what the Stoics are saying is like, what are you rushing towards? You're rushing towards death. And so that's what gives you the present moment. It's not like, I should be afraid of death, or, I should work really hard so I can squeeze it all in before death. It's like, this is all I have. Let me actually be here for this. Let me be here with the people that I'm here with. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's funny because it's like, if that sounds morbid and sad, it's because it's technically morbid.
Yes.
But also, if it's the only thing that's going to actually get you to be present, I mean, then it maybe becomes a habit, and it's not so much that you're thinking about death. You're really just, no, I really am embracing this moment for what it is, because I'm now practicing that regularly and reminding myself of it regularly. I don't know, I guess.
But isn't it way sadder to be the person that rushes through bedtime with your kids so then you can go check emails on your phone? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, but it's like, but you're constantly telling yourself the opposite all the time, right? Like, I have to check those emails. This is so great. The kids are going to bed, and so I'm going to do, which I imagine, I hope I'm not like that in my future, but I kind of know on some level you're going to be like that sometimes. You have to fight against it constantly. So, God, I have so many questions for you. This is so much fun.
All right.
But what do you think? Let's just go back to those 4 things real quick. Courage, temperance, justice, and wisdom. Do you think that it's just because those are the 4 toughest things that therefore they're the thing we have to focus on when we're thinking about being more stoic and thinking more philosophically?
The Stoics kind of thought that everything else could fit in. It was a matter of one of those, right? So doing the right courage, but courage has to be in service of the right thing, and you also need courage to do the right thing, right? So they're kind of all, so they're all the other virtues are kind of subgroups of those virtues. But so what we call those in Western philosophy, we call them the cardinal virtues. And so when people hear cardinal, they think like, oh, that means like religion. But cardinal comes from the Latin word cardos, which means pivotal. So like those are, C.S. Lewis says, like, those are the virtues that everything else hinges on. Like there's no situation that isn't improved by courage. And so that's the idea.
Got it. Okay. Okay. So this is where I'm going to get a little bit selfish.
Okay.
Probably the hardest thing for me, and I hope I'm representative of other people when I say this, is, we try to have the best of intentions, right? And especially if we're sitting down reading the Daily Stoic or reading Ego is the Enemy, and we're reading these things and we're trying to understand, and we're like, great, cool, feel enlightened. I'm so driven by this. This is really helpful. I hope I can go into my next situation and keep this in mind. And then you don't. Of
course.
Okay, so I know we just have to be human on some level, but also, like, do you ever catch yourself feeling like, okay, this other feeling is bubbling up right now, this other feeling that I have to be right, or that I'm frustrated, or that I want to share my feelings and it's probably not going to come off really well. Does that, like, how do you address that yourself? And is it ever like a crisis of like, I feel like a hypocrite, or I feel like I'm just learning this, I'm not doing this?
I mean, it's a little bit of all of that. I think like the Stoics are human beings, and I'm a human being and you're a human being. So the idea that we're ever going to come even close to whatever our ideal is naive, right? Especially at where we are in our respective journeys. So like, even for me in Stoicism, I'm only, a little more than a decade into this. I feel like I've been alive longer than I've known about Stoicism. Do you know what I mean? So like, I'm not even at the halfway point of this, right? So I think you want to see it as a lifelong journey, and I always think about progress versus perfection. So instead of thinking about it like, hey, I lost my temper, I'm a piece of shit, it's a year ago I would have done this worse. And so I'm a big believer in momentum and a big believer in focusing on progress. So and Seneca talks about this. He's like, what did you do to get better today? Right? And if you think about it like that you could believe in yourself, you can see the progress, and you can still hold yourself accountable for falling short, but it should be in the idea that you are at least moving forward.
So that's yeah.
By the way, I would think that's what Marcus Aurelius is doing in Meditations.
Yeah.
Like, he's writing about he's an old man when he's writing this.
Yeah.
And he's clearly talking about having just fucked this thing up. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, if he had gotten this, like, he's not writing for publication.
Oh.
So when he's writing a reminder about his mortality, or he's talking about temper, or he's talking about not caring about what other people think, or not being so materialistic, he doesn't know anyone's going to read it. So that means that even at 60 years old, or however old he was at that moment, he's still, having studied this his whole life, he's still falling short.
That is an interesting way of framing it, because it's so easy nowadays to read a book because somebody's writing a book to have it be read. But if you actually sit here and go, okay, he was literally just writing this because he probably was going through something, and you just get to reap the benefits of picking it up, because this is literally him reflecting on the fact that it didn't go so well.
Yes.
And what he's got to tell himself. Is that the point of the book?
Yeah. And I think, like, if we were talking earlier about journaling and affirmations and that, like, if you only read Meditations, you would not know that you'd be like, oh, I hope Marcus turned out okay. You would, like, because he's really struggling with himself. But that's it. It's the journal is the act of self-improvement. It's not that's showing the work. Your journal is you doing the work every day. It's not the reflection of who you are.
So it's really easy to zero in on Stoicism as it is like who you are in the outside world. But like, do you think that there's a level of Stoicism and philosophy that people benefit from for just how they talk to themselves or how they deal with their own feelings?
So we actually, I think the email for Daily Stoic, I think it was today, that there's this, so Cleanthes is one of the Stoics, and he's walking and he sees this philosopher who thinks he's alone, and the philosopher is sort of talking to himself, but he's being very critical. He's like, you suck. We don't know what he's saying, but the idea is he's talking meanly to himself. And Cleanthes, the Stoic, he pulls him aside and he goes, hey, I just want you to know you're not talking to a bad person. And so I think it's easy to think that Stoicism is about holding yourself accountable, being strict, like pushing yourself to be better, and that's part of it. But it also has to be balanced with self-care and self-love. And one of my favorite letters from Seneca, he talks about, he's like, what progress have I been making? He says, I'm beginning to be my own friend. And he says this as a very old man. So like he's still working on this, 60 plus years into
That's so
the
interesting. I just feel like that would be so beneficial for somebody that maybe feels like they haven't done enough in their life or isn't doing something because they're constantly trying to make everybody outside of themselves happy. Yeah. Where some people might read Stoicism and think like, I'm upsetting everybody, so I need to figure some things out.
Well, no, I think a lot of people, and I think especially women, I talk to my wife about this all the time, and social media exacerbates it. We hold ourselves to like impossible standards, and a lot of these standards are informed by how we think other people are or other people are doing, and this is based on a complete
assumption,
fabrication or assumption. And so I think that idea of like you're not talking to a bad person, and like it's like you're not a bad mom. Like the fact that you care, the fact that you think you might be a bad mom almost certainly means you're not a bad mom, because a truly bad mom would not give a shit. And I think that, it's like if you think you're a slacker, you're probably not a slacker. If like the fact that you're even caring about this is probably a sign that you're on the right path.
That's a really good observation. Okay, just kind of going back a little bit more about just how we express ourselves and how we approach different things. I'm trying to understand like this balance, right? Because I think we get sold all the time that we can't keep things pent up inside. Yes. We need to express ourselves and we need to share our feelings, but it might not always come off in the best way. So I don't know if you have any advice on balancing this whole, yes, you should do right by yourself and expressing your feelings, but in other situations maybe you have to do it a different way, because in Stoicism they're saying sort of like keep together, like don't criticize, and so that can be hard, because if that's genuinely what your feeling is, it's like, okay, well, which lane am I picking today?
Yeah, right. It's like speak your truth, but it's like, what if that truth hurts someone else?
Right.
And yeah, I think so. It's certainly a balance. I think with the Stoic, like you can think Stoicism is about suppression, or you could think about Stoicism as a filter for destructive impulses. So it's not that like the Stoics, like if you get punched, that's going to hurt. If someone says something cruel to you, that's going to hurt, and you're going to have a reaction. But I think what the Stoics are talking about is like, okay, are you still holding on to the mean thing that someone said to you a week later? So it's not, like if they say like if someone throws cold water on you, you're going to feel cold. But like you have involuntary reactions to things. You have impulses. You stub your toe, you might yell. But it's more like when you regain that control, what are you doing? So I think the Stoics are about, it's not like don't feel grief when someone you love dies. But like if you still can't get out of bed a year later, this is probably more about you than about the person that you're mourning. So it's about like, I think, filtering and processing these emotions, and then most of all like not being a slave to them in either direction.
Interesting. Do you think that it's true or false, or just an assumption, that somebody's more likely to lose sight of the Stoicism that they've been teaching themselves for the people closest to them, or the people I don't know, like how is it possible that maybe in some situations we can better assess things versus others?
Yeah, I mean, one of the interesting things about Stoicism is like Marcus Aurelius has a really shitty kid, Like, if you've seen the movie Gladiator, like Commodus, Joaquin Phoenix's character, that's based on Marcus Aurelius' son.
Oh, wow.
And it's like, I would say it's startlingly accurate, right, from what we know about Commodus. So, like, I think nobody's perfect, and we do fall short of these things. And so it's about, again, striving to get better, and then not holding anyone to an impossible standard.
It's good advice, especially since if you really think about it, we're all slowly, hopefully kind of slowly, dying. And so if we're a little bit more present,
yes,
right? Actually, I think Gary is the one that popularized this whole, like,
you're going to die.
Well, you're going to die. Also, when I'm trying to really get perspective on the day, I just envision all of my family dies. Like, that's awful to hear. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, it really resets your priorities. It really resets, like, how messy this situation is right now.
Yeah, I think when you talk to... When you really think about most of the things that people are upset about, it takes a lot for granted. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's like you're assuming you're going to live forever. You're assuming this will last forever. You're assuming that you have no other big problems in the world. Do you know what I mean? I went for a walk the other day, and I got, like, attacked by one of my neighbor's pit bulls, and like
literally attacked.
Yeah, yeah. God. Like I had to like hit it with a very large log until it stopped. It was like 5 minutes previous, I was like mad about something, and then like I didn't think about that thing for the rest of the day. Do you know, like, and so it's oftentimes emergencies or events, or, you know, it's, you find out you have cancer, or you find out someone you love have cancer, or you find out, you know, someone just ran away with all your money, you know, like very quickly, the things we're mad about get put in perspective. And I think what Stoicism is about, and why we're doing these exercises, why we have these discussions, why we read these books, is about like, okay, so that idea of like, oh, what would I do if I have cancer? What would I do if I found out I had a terminal like disease? You do have a terminal disease. Do you know what I mean? And so what Stoicism is about is like reminding yourself of that in a day-to-day way, so you never drift too far. You never drift so far off track that you need a wake-up call like that to like be like, oh man, I just wasted 8 years of my life.
It's just like so much to think about. I could talk about this all day because I feel like I've been talking to you every day for the entire year by reading the Daily Stoic. But I've also recently been reading The Stillness Is the Key, which we just talked about a little bit on AMYTV. So you guys can go check out that segment when it comes out. But I kind of want to touch on that again. This concept of stillness is the key, I feel like, is the actionable way people can start to embrace these philosophies a little bit more, right? How can we be still? What does it actually mean to be still? And how that actually would encourage productivity, right? We've talked about productivity a lot, but we're also talking about some pretty deep stuff. So yes, it's kind of funny to see them in the same conversation. Can you just kind of touch on that? What do people need to be thinking about it when it comes to stillness, and how that's going to apply to their productivity?
Well, what I'd say, like, zoom out and think about your best moments, like both personally but also like professionally. Like when I think about the best things I've written, the best talks that I've given, the best negotiations I've had, like my best moments, what was I experiencing when that happened? I wasn't like texting and watching TV and trying to do something else. Do you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. It wasn't a busy, frantic day. Like, I'm trying to remind myself, like, the books I'm going to write next, I had the idea for them when I was on vacation with my family. When I went for my walk this morning, I solved a problem for a book thing that I've been dealing with. It's like, oh, so like the walk is not a productivity hack, but it's I'm not walking for work, but by walking, I'm putting myself in a position to be better at work. When I think about meditations, Marcus isn't writing to be a better emperor, but the process of journaling and getting up early and doing that journaling is making him a better all-around human being. And so that, to me, like, so stillness is the key to what? To everything. Like, there's nothing that you're doing that would be better with less stillness in it. Even if you're having to be very active, you know, like an NFL team in a 2-minute drill with the game on the line is moving at an incredibly fast pace. But if the quarterback is nervous, if the quarterback is insecure, if the quarterback is thinking about the celebration he's going to do at the end of the, when he gets the touchdown. All of these, that's the thing to be that's the activity that you have to slow down, that you have to tamp down on.
This must be why they want to hear you talk all the time, right? Because you kind of articulate this whole like, hey, slow down when you're running so fast with the ball, and like actually look at it before you try to take off and run with it, right?
Yeah, I think so. I think at the end of the day, sports, the military, people are trying to be more productive. Elite performance is elite performance is elite performance, and your strategies work for someone who's being president or someone who's just trying to like write a novel in their spare time. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like it's really hard to do good stuff, and the strategies are pretty basic, pretty straightforward, and people figured them out a really long time ago.
Okay, super practical question about your walk. So
Yes.
you're on your walk, you solved the problem, it's in your head.
Yes.
What do you do with it? Do you just hope you don't forget by the time you get back? Because this is an inclination is like, oh, I got my phone, let me take it out and write a note to myself, and then oops, I checked Twitter and blah, 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 blah.
So I don't take the phone with me for the very simple reason that I'd rather forget 1 out of 10 ideas than not have 9 of the ideas because I was actually on my phone the whole time. So I just try to say them to myself over and over and over again, and then I run in and I have note cards and I write them down on note cards.
This is just a selfish question again because I have like the worst memory ever. But
yeah.
Okay, I want everybody to check out Stillness Is the Key. That's your latest book. There's so many other amazing ones to choose from, and I'll link to those as well. I'm a huge fan of the Daily Stoic. I think it's a great opportunity for somebody to kind of get acquainted with these philosophies, especially if you're not a great reader. Just 1 page a day is really helpful. You also have a ton of other resources. We'll get to that in a second. But first, I want to ask you sort of about the details of your day.
Okay.
As you know, I just wrote Good Morning, Good Life, and thank you for contributing to that. Can you touch a little bit on what your morning routine is like?
So I get up early, no phone for the first 30 minutes, 1 hour. Like, just don't use the phone first thing. Go for the walk, then I usually shower, breakfast, journal. Sometimes I'll move these orders around, and then I go straight into whatever the important thing that I have to do so it's almost always writing first, and then like no calls in the morning, writing first, because writing's the hard thing. Writing's the thing I don't want to get interrupted. And the point of the walk and the family time and all of that is about getting in the right headspace to do the writing.
Yeah. And I also love, I think you wrote in your passage for my book, like, just don't worry so much about what the details of everybody's morning routines is. And that was the whole point of my book, is have one that's right for you.
Yes.
And whatever that is, and figure it out for yourself.
Well, so I know you did like a commonplace book thing, and I'm a big believer in that. Obviously, that's one of the, so I've written about this, I've done videos about it. But so people go like, well, should I put the cards here, or should I use this color card? And it's like, you're missing the point. It's the general idea. Like, I got the general idea from Robert Greene. Then I put my own spin on it. Go put your own spin on it. Like, we can get a little to productivity people, and it's usually like a right brain or a type A thing. They want to know the right way to do it. They're like, well, what journal should I use? Should I start at this time? What color pen should I use? And it's like, no. Just start journaling, then optimize your own. Like, I'm telling you to journal. Everything else is noise.
Like, notice it.
Yes.
Notice the fact that you're journaling. Notice what's uncomfortable about it, what's easy about it, what's fun about it, what's not. What do you feel benefited? And you have to actually just try it to know.
Yeah, because people are like, should I read audiobooks or ebooks or physical? Seriously, like, whatever you want. Like, I only read physical books because that's how I like them. But if I lived a slightly different life or a slightly different way of learning, I'd be saying the exact opposite. So I think people can get too caught up with the tactics and not the overall strategy.
Absolutely. And also just this whole glorifying sitting down and actually reading pages, if that's not your thing, and then you never read because you don't even turn on Audible or something, then like that defeats the purpose of you being able to take advantage of that. How do you stay active? What's your workout regimen?
So I run or swim almost every day. So when you came, I was just coming back from a run. So I love Austin because it's great for both those things. And again, I find like I almost always have ideas for books or projects or products. I would say like I don't work out to stay in good shape. That's part of it. It's like it's probably the most important work thing that I do every day.
Yeah, I think I definitely don't do it to get fit because I'll go eat a taco right after. But I definitely feel so much more energy on a daily basis. And I know that I'm getting into a more depressive state if I haven't had some kind of movement or activity in a couple days. At least it starts to catch up to you. Do you consider yourself organized? Is there anything you have that's a habit for how you stay organized?
I mean, I'm very organized in some ways, very disorganized in others. Like I'm not a calendar. For me, like organized means there's nothing in my calendar, which means I'm only doing what I want to do. So like my calendar is like very minimalist. Like I want, like my thing for my assistant is like no more than 3 things in my calendar in one day.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
But that's because if it's not in the calendar, it means I'm writing. So I'm very sort of organized about like how, like I don't want things taking up my time because then I end up pivoting around those things, and I don't like that.
We are both speakers for Vayner Speakers.
Yes.
And I'm curious of what your process is like when you get ready for a talk. Like, what kind of a speaker are you in terms of like how you deliver, and then what do you do to prep?
So because I've written a bunch of different books and they're all sort of story based, like lots of different stories, my talks are very modular. So it's like, what are the 15 stories I want to tell, and I put them together. So it's almost always not the talk I just gave. It's always a different talk. So I like that a lot.
Yeah.
And then I'm very routine based in that, like, I want to get there the day before. I want to get up early. I want to work out before I talk. I want to not eat. I want to, like, I'm very, like, territorial about, like, how early they want me to get there. Because, like, they're like, oh, you go on at 2. Could you get there at 11 a.m.? And then they're like, no, I'm not going to hang out in this room for 3 hours. That's, like, the worst energy. Like, I'll be, like, I'll have terrible, like, so this year I gave a talk. I spoke at the NFL owners meeting. So it was all the coaches and GMs and owners of NFL teams. And they, like, this was like a very prestigious thing, and they were like, so we'd like you to sit in the front row. And there's 5 other speakers. They each spoke for 10 minutes. And I was like, I cannot do this. Like, I was like, I need to be out in the hallway pacing up and down until like 4 seconds before I go on.
Right.
But I think you have to know like what headspace delivers your best work. So when I'm talking about stillness, it's like that I needed to be pacing and listening to music and totally in my own head till right before I went on. If I was sitting there watching the other talks, I'd be comparing myself and wondering if I messed up and wanting to change things and needing to go to the bathroom 30 times. So like you figure out what gets you in the right headspace.
Plus they try to put a mic on you like way too early. So
yes.
No, I haven't peed like at least 20 more times.
I've seen a microphone before. I know how this works. I know it takes 8 seconds to turn on.
Seriously.
Like, we're good.
We're going to be fine. I've done this a couple times. Okay, I think Meditations is a really great recommendation, but is there any other book or resource that you think people should be looking at, other than, of course, the plethora of library items by Ryan Holiday?
I really like Cal Newport's new book, Digital Minimalism, and I like his book, Deep Work.
Yeah.
So maybe those two.
Awesome. Yeah. Cool. I want to link to that. I just realized we're getting so late in our chat, so I could sit here and talk to you all day, but I'm not going to do that to you. Where can everybody follow up with you and definitely get a copy of Stillness Is the Key?
Yeah, that'd be awesome. So books are sold everywhere. I'm RyanHoliday.net, at Ryan Holiday everywhere, and then Daily Stoic is dailystoic.com and at Daily Stoic everywhere.
Awesome. In a couple minutes, I'd like to challenge you to the Secret Show, if that's okay.
Okay.
You guys can find out more details about that in Shine Squad at patreon.com/AMYTV. But before we do that, I have to ask you my final question.
Okay.
What does it mean to you to go after the life that you want?
I mean, I think that's what you were put on the planet to do, right? Like, so it means like the idea of like, this is what I was meant to do. If I don't do it, what am I doing? So it feels right.
Ryan, thanks for being on the show.
Yeah.